this, and it all faded out. Well, I went to my notes last night around midnight, and I said, no, I don't want to talk about this. So I began anew, fresh. Just didn't have enough first and sixth ray in it, you know what I mean? It was too rational. I just felt it was time to, increase the heat. And it's a comfortable room, isn't it? And there's still a few of us left. Yes. All right. So, it all depends. What's the name of this talk? I don't even know anymore. What are the questions?
The next 8 years.
Oh, the next 8 years. That's right. Okay. Thank you for reminding. Nope, no longer. But, I'll work in those themes as we go along. But the next 8 years are important. That's obvious, and a lot depends on it. And, we're hierarchies meeting in conclave with Shambhala. Even the shambolic beings are involved in this. And so you kind of wonder, when you think about that, whether it really impresses us, and it's a stupendous thing. And does it really sink in what this really means? Just think about those beings. The three supernal ones, the three Buddhas of activity, the 7 great spirits, probably the spirits before the throne, and even the 3 esoteric Kumaras, great residents of Shambhala. I don't even have the list, but you had that. I'm always inspired when I read the list. A representative from Venus, from Sirius, and so forth, meeting in conclave. And of course, Sanat Kumara himself. So I kind of wonder, how much we're willing to do. This is the word, of course, operative word. How much we're willing to do to prepare humanity for this hierarchical shambolic assessment that's on its way, because they always take stock of where we are every 100 years, and they determine what is possible. So obviously what is possible depends upon disciples in the world. So I just wonder, because we talk about it, it's coming, 2025 is coming, etc., but does it really, really sink in? So, I said to myself, keep it simple, Michael. Okay, well, impossible. But okay, what in all simplicity, what really needs to be done? And what are we willing to do? That's my question. I'm asking myself that all the time. And do we know what needs to be done by people like ourselves, and what are we willing to do? And can we really can we realize the extraordinary nature of this moment? A lot of people pass through huge planetary catastrophes and don't even realize what's happening. But I wonder, whether we can put first things first. DK always talks about that, put the essential first, and do we have our priorities straight? And I'm asking you, everything I ask you, I ask myself all the time. That's why I ask you. So, how, in line with all this, I ask, really, we do a lot to make sacrifice seem palatable, and, to make sacred and all the rest. Sounds like you don't have to sacrifice when you're just making things sacred. But I ask, how is the sacrificial will functioning in our lives? And are we really sacrificing anything to make the world better? So I'm asking you seriously, I'm asking me seriously, are those sacrifice petals quivering, and are we really, really sacrificing? And how is because nothing happens without that, and as Master Moria said, when have you ever become less through sacrifice, he said. So what about the expression of the spiritual will, which is Atmic? Its roots are in Atma. How is that functioning in our lives? And do we have any familiarity with this impersonal type of will? It's not only suprapersonal, it's impersonal. It's up there on the planes where the planetary logos is functioning, and it's not about our experience particularly, it's about his. So what part of the divine plan are we really willing to manifest? Maybe if I like the italics, What are we really willing to manifest here in the divine plan, as much as we can find out what it is? So, and I guess for a while, most of us can defer our concern about monadic will. Occasionally it comes in, except what I would call the will to oneness. The will to oneness, which has been a note sounded beautifully by so many people, which will help us overcome the great heresy of separateness. And I think, for quite a few of us, it's important, even though it can't be the main thing here until we've passed the third degree or, even beyond that, fourth degree. But okay, the will to oneness, very important. So I guess I can and I should say that we are not dealing with business as usual. And DK tried to get that across during the crisis years, but with making our spirituality as real as possible. Or maybe I should say as actual as possible, right here, as actual as possible. And getting the most out of ourselves. The old turnip. They don't let you go till they've squeezed you dry, So, we're all turnips and the hierarchy's got a grip. So, how much can you get out of a turnip? They can get quite a lot. So these are definitely not ordinary times. Let's hear what DK has to say about this and how he regards us. This is to one of his disciples. I could wish, as far as the immediate present is concerned, and I don't think times have changed very much, that you were all younger and had availed yourself more definitely of the teaching I have sought to give you these past years. Above everything else, I wish you were more courageous. Okay. Does this word surprise you, my brothers? In considering this year as a whole, I question not your devotion or your steadfastness. I have confidence in the depth of your aspiration and your desire for the will to good. Notice, desire for the will to good. Okay. I know that naught will turn you for any length of time from the pursuit of your goal. I mean, we can get off the track for a little while, but the true disciple has that homing reorientation, Sagittarius, that arrow turns around and gets right back on the path. I do, however, question your courage. It takes courage to make spiritual decisions and to abide by them. It takes courage to adjust your lives daily and in all relations to the need of the hour and to the service of mankind. It takes courage to demonstrate to those around you that the present world catastrophe is of more importance to you than the petty affairs of your individual lives and your humdrum contacts. Sounds like the feeble meander, doesn't it? It takes courage to discard the alibis which have prevented you from participating to date in the all-out effort which characterizes today the activities of hierarchy. It takes courage to make sacrifices, to refuse time to non-essential activities, and to deal with the physical body as if it were free from all impediments. That's a big one. It takes courage to ignore frailties which may be present, the tiredness incident to a long life, the physical tendencies which handicap and limit your service, the sleeplessness which comes from world pressures or from a badly regulated life program, and the nervousness and strain which are the common lot today. It takes courage to attack life on behalf of others and to obliterate your own wishes in the emergency and need. Ooh. So that was then, this is now, right? So there's no worry now because that was then, right? Well, this is the third and last attack of the forces of obstruction before the year 2025. It's all out now. So we're living in even more critical times because in those days you couldn't really destroy the world and humanity, and now you really can. So are these times different now, and I say we're really in a state of emergency. I feel that. There's so many beautiful things happening, as we have seen. I mean, really uplifting things, and you feel so good about them, and eventually they will prevail, but the forces of obstruction have risen again. And do you doubt it? I mean, do you doubt that? Are they just minor interferences in something that's going swimmingly well, They've risen again. And this is for the time being, because later on, we're not going to get rid of this stuff until the last judgment, which is in the 5th round, probably of our chain, and then, these forces are banished from the planet, and the sacredness of our planet is probably coming on. So this is the first time, for the time being, I would say, it's the last chance for these malevolent forces, because if they cannot destroy humanity by the year 2025, or at least badly delay and destroy our best possibilities, then they will fail. Okay, they will fail. So that's what we're, think about the next 8 years. 8 is quite a number, and we need the failure of the forces of obstruction to stop the onward sweep of humanity into the Aquarian age. Maybe I find myself always in the emergency mode, just being in Aries, perhaps, live in a constant state of emergency. But I find myself in the emergency mode. And, it's not always comfortable. But I say to myself that if I'm not registering the emergency of the present times, then I'm in a state of avoidance and denial. There's this underlying emergency. In the days of Atlantis, Master Moria says that they even put people to death for talking about the bad weather. Things were gathering, right? And warnings were coming out. And so they didn't want that, and these people were eliminated. So, the danger is that we lull ourselves to sleep in the anticipation that the masters will somehow take care of things, and that the good will somehow rise without a struggle. Well, don't forget what kind of planet we live on. This is a struggling planet, and we're right in the middle of a fourth initiation of a kind right on this globe. So there's going to be struggle. And it's not very comfortable to live as if you were engaged in the most consequential war which humanity has ever faced. Really, we could, he tells us right in the beginning of Problems of Humanity, first edition, he says we could really destroy ourselves and have to go right back to the beginning and see if somehow a humanity could not be raised up that actually would obey the law and do what it's supposed to do. And he says this is a possibility which can be envisioned. In other words, he sees that possibility. So that's not very comfortable to think about, and when things are not comfortable, we often put them aside and don't think about them. Well, but why is all this discomfort upon us? And it's because of the great shift, it's obvious, to the fifth kingdom of nature, right? It's possible now, and the Lord Maitreya, the Christ, is returning to the physical plane for more than 2,000 years. He made quite an impact when he was here for 3 years. Imagine 2,000 years. So that's a terrible, formidable opposition to the forces of opposition. When they anticipate this, that the Christ is going to be here in physical form for 2,000 years, it's just scaring them, They've got to try to do something. So, if all this succeeds, I believe it will, and the becoming sacredness of our planet, it will not be stopped, and the forces of obstruction will be defeated. But, of course, that depends on people like us who know something about the inner world. And, he said if there had been, what's the old saying in the Old Testament? I would save the world for the sake of 10 righteous men, or something like that. Men or women, but 10 righteous human beings. But it couldn't be found. It couldn't be found at the time. So there's pressures on those who know these things and really put them first. If we put these things first, and don't forget, as soon as the conference is over, we go back to our regular stuff, But if we put these things first and really act upon them, well, we have to face much that makes life heavy. The water carrier, water's pretty heavy. It's not water really, but you know what it is. And you got it on your shoulder, and it's a strain. You're not yet walking with that thing on your head under the law of service, right? So it's a strain. The burden of this, the burden of that. Have you read in esoteric psychology? This is the burden of the self, the burden of what? Humanity, the burden of the world, something like that. Right, page 333 on esoteric psychology, the burden of everything. For Aquarius, it's a burden. So we're entering there, we're carrying stuff, we're carrying a load. We're called light bearers. Light is heavy. The burden of knowing is heavy. It's not quite the same, His yoke is easy and his burden light. Interesting, from the Bible again. So we're facing many things, and it's tough on a lot of us. And Master Moria says that if, or is it the Tibetan that says that? Well, I don't distinguish at a certain point. He says, well, if there were more of the disciples carrying their burden properly, it wouldn't weigh so heavily on a few disciples who really have a crunching load. So, you're among the few and prepare to get crunched. That's the thing. It's crunch time now. So anyway, there are pressures. I was heartened by reading from Agni Yoga, or maybe from heart, that pressure is the law of existence. It justified the way I lived, and we always like that. But when it comes to pressure, the law of the pump, the stronger the pressure goes down, the more we will rise. So that's the law of the pump, and he talks about it. So, when you're really committed, there can be tension, there can be fatigue, possibly even exhaustion on occasion, and plenty of danger from obscure sources, of the occult kind. Because when you're really trying to do something, you can, the attack can come from within yourself, from your neighbors, from even your students, and from other things that are of an occult nature. There's war going on inside. So internally, we know that something really has to be done, inwardly, occultly, and this will mean the sharpening of our meditative skills. And this doesn't mean that we don't do outward things of a good nature, help to straighten out things, cooperate with the New Group World Service, sharing our money, our time in external ways, because we got to do both, as DK said, when he was criticizing some of the people in England for not cooperating in the war effort in an external way. So both are needed. But it does mean this, that we must not underestimate the value of occult work by those who are highly trained. And we had better be highly trained by now. We have to fit ourselves as members of the army of Maitreya, as it said in Agni Yoga. Are there 1 million in that army? Are there more? It's right in the beginning of Agni Yoga book about the army of Maitreya. And their weapons, love and light and all of those things. Not a normal army, but it's war on the inner planes. And it's unpleasant to think so, but it is. That's what it is. Master Moria says that half the world thinks and the other half carries out the thought. So I hope we're on the right side there, thinking the right thoughts so that they will be carried out properly. And how engaged are we in this inner battle? Maybe you doubt that there is one. I don't know how you can doubt it, It's really going on underneath the surface. How engaged are we in this inner battle, which is now raging in the psychological realm of Kama Manas? That's where it's raging. Desire, thought, their unwholesome admixture, not being able to think straight, not being able to discriminate, desiring the wrong things, not having the right sense of values. This is going on all the time, and the tip of the scale has to happen by 2025. And I think it will. So in a real war, we would not lay down our weapons if the enemy were always threateningly near. And this is the case today, in my opinion, though so often we comfort ourselves into believing that it's not really so, and that the beauty emerging in the human race, which beauty it is, will take care of many antagonistic forces. But we do not, and we must not lay down our spiritual weapons. I mean, look back at World War II. Would pacifism have worked in World War II? See, and this was amazingly the great critique from Master DK against pacifism at that time. Gandhi is a highly respected man, but, the hierarchy said, oh, look, this pacifism will not work. Yeah, it will not. So, we have all these tools to work with, but we cannot be naive. We can recognize the good rising. It's beautiful. I've just seen some wonderful things here, just beautiful things. Recognize the good rising and be vigilant inside yourself, because the war is right inside ourselves. And whatever arises in us can arise in society, and we're never far away from what you might call the rising of the elemental forces that St. Paul experienced. as a Scorpio, like the dragon. It's always there until it's not. So instead of this pacifism, even while longing for peace that is coming, we would affirm the laws and principles which will help the new group of world servers prevail. And as Meditation Mount affirms these things, we have to be aware of them, It's the law of right human relations, the principle of goodwill, the law of group endeavor, the principle of unanimity, one-souledness, the law of spiritual approach at last, and the principle of essential divinity. We've really been working on that one here, These 6 principles are key. Laws and principles are key to what we must affirm. This is one of the ways we handle ourselves in this inner psycho-spiritual war. I guess what I'm saying and asking you and asking myself is, do we really do our best? Okay, I really ask myself that all the time. I don't get a happy answer, do I really do my best? Do we really do our best? And can we be assured in any given moment, when the willingness to do our best is demanded, that we're actually doing our best? Like DK said, I tried to find that reference. He basically says, don't go to the movies, don't eat candy. Something like that. He says, the next number of years are not usual. He says, you just can't do your normal, happy, leisurely, usual, fun stuff the next few years. Maybe someone knows where that reference is. It's a good one. But it was late, So do we really do our best? And are we accepting that we're under the law of sacrifice, the very first law of the soul, very first law? And that the pressure towards real sacrifice, which is giving up the lesser for the greater, is upon us now. It would be a terrible thing to be shoved aside as an experimental irrelevancy. We tried with the disciples of the world, but they proved to be, after all, irrelevant and useless and feeble and hopeless. But I'm not really meaning that. Everybody's good and good things are being done, but the hierarchy needs something that really works. And they're already looking around at other possibilities. The question is, have we succeeded? Have we failed? Are we somewhere in the middle in all that? The great impulse that put out the DK books and all that. Has it succeeded? Succeeded in some measure? Has it failed? Why are all those Alice Bailey books down at the very bottom of the bookshelf or up so high you can't reach them? Why? Whereas if you're channeling this or that or some nonsensical thing, everybody's eating it up. We got to do our job. So we don't want to be irrelevant. As a group of people who have been given the treasures of occultism, however, we just couldn't bring ourselves to rise to the occasion. I hope that's not the case. And I deeply trust that it's not. And that we know that we cannot let it be the case. Well, we can't be those who allowed the whole structure of the society to descend into an unwinnable outer war, which could mean the end of humanity as we know it, and the requirement to start all over again. We wouldn't be able to live with ourselves, would we, on the inner planes, because it'd be really hard to find a body for a long time, So I wonder if we would be frightened if we realized how much was really being placed upon our shoulders. I mean, if we soberly contemplated what's really at stake here. I mean, it could kind of take your breath away a little bit, or it could exhilarate you, you know what I mean? There's the other possibility, right? Anyway, we're not living for the little personal self, and even the well-trained little personal self is living for something higher altogether, with our eyes off our personal fate. Easily said, easily said. But then when it comes time to apply it, then where are we? So it's hard to do, but that's what the sacrificial will requires. So if we're working impersonally for the divine will, what comes first? The divine plan, or little old us, little old us, mistaken identity. Let's have a little bit about the burning nature of monadic will. I think it's timely a moment, because this will purify us of personalism, which is a great limitation. And who here is free of it, you know? If we had taken the fourth initiation, maybe we could say we're free of it, but we haven't. So I enjoy this section. The burning ground referred to here is something very different. When the blazing light of the sun is correctly focused on or through a glass, it can cause ignition. When the blazing light of the monad is focused directly upon the personality via the antakarana and not specifically through the soul, it produces a blazing fire which burns up all hindrances in a steady sequential process. That's what we want, right? Might be a little hot and uncomfortable, but that's what we want. Wording it otherwise, when the will aspect streams from the monad and focuses through the personal will, as the mind can grasp and realize it, it destroys as by fire all elements of self-will. As the energy of Shambhala streams out and makes a direct contact with humanity, omitting the transmission via the hierarchy, which has hitherto been customary, you have what can be seen in the world today, a destructive conflagration or a world burning ground. When the antakarana of a group is rightly constructed, then the individualized group will disappear in the full consciousness of the monadic purpose or clear, directed will. These are the points which the disciple preparing for initiation has to consider as he prepares for the higher initiations. And these are the points which any group or ashram in preparation for initiation has also to consider. Do you find those words inspiring? I do.
Yes.
Okay. Are they terrifying? Well, DK promises us both terror and joy as we advance upon the path. You know, it says somehow the inevitability of the path is both its horror and its, I use the word delight, but you know, that's not the word. It's just, it's so wonderful and it's so terrible at the same time. That's what Swami Vivekananda realized when he went into the Shiva ice cave. You know, he's around 4th degree, and he went in there and he came out seeing the whole reason and need for the contrast between good and evil. He saw it, you know, and it was just terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. Okay, so may we all enter the ice cave. So, can we drop the habitual in favor of a new beginning in which will, easily said, the sacrificial will, the spiritual will, and even monadic will, as here been described, enters our life as never before. You know, this is a 1 year, in a way, if you look at the dates. Can we do that? And are we willing, I'm asking myself, you know, everything I ask you, I ask myself. Are we willing to say goodbye to the self-indulgent fruits of tamas? You know, lying around having a good time, okay? And enter the world of rajas and even sattva, the 3 gunas. Obviously, tamas doesn't work, and we all have plenty of residual tamas in us. Maybe it doesn't show up at conferences, but when you get home, I know, I stare at the wall. What do you do? I mean, you know, a little tamas remains. Doubting tamas. Oh, okay, never mind. All right. Now this is a good one. Are we willing to cut athwart our personality lives in the interest of directing the personality towards maximal productivity in the service of the divine plan? So here's what Master DK says about that to one of his disciples. Again, I point the way to you, and again I wait. Will you intensify your inner life and achieve the power which will enable you to live simultaneously as an efficient human being and as a living, loving soul? It is the establishing of the continuity of this dual process which is your main need at this time. It will lead to fusion, personality coordination, and a greatly increased efficiency. Many disciples are not young, and the settled habit of thought and of feeling life, is not easy to disrupt. They must, however, be disrupted, and you must feel no resentment. The rhythms of the personality are stabilized and constitute your line of least resistance. You must cut athwart these, thus forming the cross of life and existence will then take on added difficulty. The results will be new rhythms of beauty. Sounds good, huh? Or is it just a little too much before lunch? I don't know. It's cut athwart. It's the, you know, personality is going this way, and here's this other direction, and it forms the cross. That nice second ray master DK, you know how second ray is. It's just easygoing. And he wouldn't ever say, whip yourself into shape, would he? But he does. And now he's cutting athwart our personality life. All right. Well, these are challenging words. Then Master M comes along and promises us endless labor. And do we feel mildly uncomfortable with that? Or when we really understand his meaning, or really uncomfortable? Or perhaps understanding the nature of the Spirit, we feel really inspired. Hey, look, we've already had endless labor. That's the funny thing about infinity. I won't get off on that subject, but any special time that you look at is already endless. So you've been working a long time, or no time at all, in eternal duration. But anyway, you know how it is with our personality, endless labor sounds rough. So out of the many good things, we have to go for the most essential. Love in action, goodwill is love in action, right human relations, the theme of Shambhala, this is fundamental. Hard, because we're not so skillful as we could be. One of the words given to Alice Bailey, DRS, detachment, rest, skill in action, given to Alice Bailey as her keynote, skill in action. And then there's the light and the power of the ageless wisdom. What a treasure, I mean, how much is it worth to you, to me, to us? Priceless, So, just think if humanity could really, those who could absorb it. And then, of course, foremostly, the divine plan. These are the essential things. The order in which, it's so interesting when you hear this, it sounds almost like, it sounds cold. But the first thing you have to serve is the divine plan, because it really helps everybody. Then you serve those who serve that plan, who the plan serves, and then those who serve the plan. That's the order of our attention. The divine plan, those whom the plan serves, and then those who serve the plan. That's how he wants us to act. From the astrological angle, Uranus is still in the sign Aries. That's really first ray. Here you have your foremost first ray monadic planet, Uranus, with the seventh ray soul, in the sign which transmits more first ray than any other at this time. So what a first ray opportunity this really is, and it will last a little longer. When does it go into Taurus? I'll choose the right moment. When does it go into Taurus? In a year or two? A couple years? We can expect, will the electricity be earthed in Taurus, or will it really? Anyway, there's tremendous initiatives possible now, which can have a real continuity towards the year 2025. So I look at this, and it doesn't make any difference how old we are, apparently, in the body. It doesn't make any difference. It can't make any difference. Otherwise, we do the feeble meander. It's some kind of dance, isn't it? The feeble meander down the years as we end with spiritual futility and regret. I don't know what the movement is on this feeble meander, but I just feel it's something I don't want to do, Well, I was thinking about Andrew the other night and this King Harry, King, and the St. Crispin Days thing and the We Happy Few and all that battle cry. Wow, what a exhortation that was with that outnumbered group. Was it 10-1, 5-1? I forget. It was big, outnumbered, bedraggled, but under the influence of inspiration, they won. I saw some good movies about that. The French were caught in the mud at that time, It was a muddy day. They had shiny armor, but it was a muddy day. And the inspired ones won the day, even though they were outnumbered. So for us on every plane, the forces of obstruction must be driven back. Well, they're pretty strong, you know. 6 leaders in the West and 6 leaders in the East. You know, they mean business. And as Madame Roerich said, well, calling Satan as she called Satan, Satan wants to destroy the planet and float away on the wreck. These are her words. And, you know, it's not Satan as Blavatsky describes the solar angels and all that, but she means the lower elemental forces. And so, let's start to use the second liberation again. Let the second great invocation. Let the lords of liberation issue forth. Let them bring succor to the sons of men. Let the rider from the secret place come forth and coming save. Come forth, O mighty one. Let the souls of men awaken to the light, and may they stand with massed intent. Let the fiat of the Lord go forth. The end of woe has come. Come forth, O mighty one. The hour of service of the saving force has now arrived. Let it be spread abroad, O mighty one. Let light and love and power and death fulfill the purpose of the coming one. The will to save is here. The love to carry forth the work is widely spread abroad. The active aid of all who know the truth is also here. Come forth, O mighty one, and blend these 3. Construct a great defending wall. The rule of evil now must end. You know, it's not just World War II. This is potent now, and we should use it. This is part of our inner occult work, okay? All the great invocations, 36, 1940, 1945, all of them are powerful now. The great defending wall, you've heard of it, haven't you? You know, it's obviously, you know, Master Mori, he was so funny, you know, he's just, boy, you know, we're protecting you from the Satanists. You would be a tasty morsel for them, he said. But we're protecting you. Okay, and the people who are marked out, reappearance of the Christ, really working for that, are marked out for protection. At the moment, you know, karma will always come, but at the moment, the great defending wall works. You know, it just holds back the hordes. When you go into the movies there, the Lord of the Rings, they were pretty good with makeup, weren't they? I mean, you know, you wouldn't want to look like an orc, would you? I mean, you know, look, those armies were pretty awful, weren't they? Just degraded, totally degraded. And that's what the great defending wall is holding back. That. Because that's there. The lower levels of the astral plane are just dying to precipitate. And even in the book of Revelation, you've got that precipitation going on. We got to be strong. So let's use this mantra. Now, let's test our powers of resistance, okay? Because we can always resist, you know. There's all OHM as well as OM, right? If you have 5th ray, you'll laugh. All right. All right, anyway. So, here's an exhortation from Master DK. And when I read and think about it carefully, I'm not too good at resisting, okay? To those who are standing in the blaze of pain, and their number are legion, of agony, anxiety, and distress, and there are many such in the world today, seeing it on every hand and attempting to stand steady in the midst of it all, I say, that which appears is not always that which truly is. That which rends and disrupts the personality life is frequently the agent of release, if rightly apprehended. That which will emerge when the forces of light have penetrated the world darkness will demonstrate the nature of the undying human spirit. To all of you I say, my love surrounds you, and the aura of the ashram of which I am the center stands like a great defending wall around you and around all who are battling for the right. And then these italicized words from a nice second ray master, see that you battle. You can then, if you will, sense the loving protection. Each day, if you will, you can put yourself en rapport with your master. We are not blind or uncaring. We know, however, that there are worse evils than death and pain. We know that this is the hour of humanity's greatest opportunity, and that if men can pass triumphantly through this, and by the strength of their own souls, surmount this very present evil, then the evolution of humanity will be hastened beyond all that was believed possible. It will constitute a release, self-achieved and self-initiated. And this means as much in the life of mankind as it means in the life of the individual disciple. That chance and that opportunity must not be taken away from man. The gained spiritual and eternal values are of far greater importance than his temporary agony. Don't you love that perspective? Okay, but that's the Master's perspective. Everything, you know, the pain, all that, temporary, and the eternal values are established. Little as you may realize it as you think of us in our so-called safe retreats, the capacity of identification with all that is involved in world pain today, and the sensitivity of those connected with the hierarchy to the unhappy condition of humanity makes their task of standing by one of supreme spiritual agony. They understand the depths of the reaction of humanity. They comprehend and understand, for they are one with all men. This involves a far greater comprehension than you can grasp, and one which can only be adequately expressed in the word identification. They need the staunch support of all their disciples, the steadfast love, the loyal attitude, the unquestioning response to human need, which will enable them to carry more easily the heavy burden which human karma has laid upon them and which they carry voluntarily. Will you give this? Will you aid our work in every possible way, both as personalities dedicated to service and as souls who walk the lighted way? The need of humanity for love and light, the need of the hierarchy for channels and for those who will work under direction upon the earth can call forth all that you have to give and can evoke your soul, the only true reward that the disciple seeks in power and love. This will happen to you if you will forget the little self. That your knowledge may be transmuted into wisdom and the eye of vision control your living processes and all your undertakings is the desire deep within my heart for each and all of you, your friend, your master, friend, and teacher, the Tibetan. Hard to resist, isn't it? It's so stirring. You know, Master DK, you know, he had a lot of sixth ray. He did, really, in the old days. Matter of fact, some of the masters, they tell jokes too, you know. And apparently Master DK was so zealous that he ran smack into a doorway and broke his nose. And they had a laugh about that. Full of zeal, full of fiery zeal. Well, those are old times, you know, when you're training up a master, you know. But anyway, here we have your master, your friend, and teacher, Master DK. And he's talking to every one of us. That's the amazing thing. So it's coming, you know, the great conflict between humanity and its dweller on the very threshold of the new age. In fact, it's really here. You know, the Second World War was that, but again, with the stakes even higher and more insidious. So let's apply all we have learned about the will to make us effective warriors. I know that word was used. And here's the quote. Behind the warriors, twixt the light and dark, blazes the light of hierarchy. You know, as they revolve upon the pedestal of light and turn the other way, and the light flows forth from them, and the face of those upon the darkened way receives that light, and then it's not so dark. Behind the warriors, twixt the light and dark, blazes the light of hierarchy. And not only warriors, but effective guardians in the coming time when Lord Maitreya will bring not peace, but the sword of discrimination, so that humanity may learn to discriminate between the pairs of opposites, soul and personality, and discriminating, see and at last choose the spiritual values rather than the selfish values. I get the feeling that the spiritual hierarchy of our planet is counting on each and every one of us. So don't excuse yourself, and I won't excuse myself, through the cherished but cowardly illusion of your insignificance or my insignificance. We all count in this raging battle. We all count. We are all significant. So this is the internal warfare leading to the great era of peace when Satan will be bound for 1,000 years. You know, that's the elemental nature, right? It's coming, we can be assured, and we must be ready. So do what you can and do what you must. And with you, I will do what I can and what I must. Humanity and the great ones are depending on us. Okay, thank you.